What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Time Killers podcast. My name is Neil Rivera, and today I'm killing time with Mr. Matthew Field. How's it going, Matt?
I'm doing well.
I'm also killing time with Wesley Rivera. How's it going, Wes?
Nothing much, just drinking everything I find under the bathroom sink.
And I'm assuming that is peach schnapps and bleach?
Toilet cleaner.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, good luck. Tell us how that, keep us posted on how that goes as the show progresses. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the show. We got a good one lined up for you. We've been playing some games. We've been seeing some movies. We got some stuff to talk about. But yeah, guys, with that being said, let's just roll right into it. We've been playing Grounded 2. This is the latest from Obsidian Entertainment? Obsidian Entertainment. This is the sequel to Grounded 1. It's a survival sim. You play as one of four teenagers that end up getting shrunk in a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids type science experiment. And so the whole survival sim experience sort of takes place in a backyard. In this one, it seems to have expanded into like sort of a larger park. There's an evil corporation behind it. It's got like this great 80s, 90s sort of retro vibe to it. And we've been playing it. So, Matt, I'm going to start with you. What are your thoughts on Grounded 2? How much have you been playing, and where are you sitting with it overall?
I have played probably a little over 3 hours. So, just for the audience, we've all kind of played together, I think, at different points. Neil, you and I played. I'm not sure if you guys, Wesley, you and Neil played some, but the time that we played together was about, I guess, a little over 3 hours, and that's the extent of my experience with the game so far. And I didn't play the first, so I don't have that as a point of comparison. But I've played, a number of survival games in my time, and I'm pretty high on it so far. I don't know that it's how different it is from the first, but it is it's presenting. It seems like a more narrative forward approach. It hits you with a lot of actual story, which I wasn't expecting based on what the trailers that I've seen from the first game. It feels, for an early access game, it feels and plays really well. It looks great. Very impressed with it so far.
Yeah, it was one of the things that stood out to me immediately was just like how polished, like it sort of feels right out of the gate. Like it almost feels like a 1.0, which, I'm sure they've got a lot to lean on from the original Grounded and how, that development ended up. So I feel like they've got a good foundation for this one. Wes, what about you? How much time have you put into Grounded 2, and where are you sitting at with it overall?
Well, so I've currently got 9 hours clocked in. I've been kind of playing it on and off when I'm not working. I have played the first Grounded game, and I enjoyed it. Like you said, it's a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids type situation turned into a survival crafting type game. I will say, the first game did not have as much story. A lot of it was just kind of passive. You just kind of pick up, tidbits here and there, and it kind of, steamrolled. But it looks like for this one, they are just kind of at the gate, just like, hey, we've got this, there's a storyline, the tutorial like quest that you'll pick up at the beginning kind of lean into the story that they're telling. It's super fun. Like I said, I like the first game, and I like what they've improved on, and it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel like we've got an interesting sort of like diversity of perspective here, because like I dabbled very, very like little in Grounded 1. Like it was like when it first launched, and it was very rough, and like I knew it was an early access game, so I was kind of like, I'll get back to it, and I never got back to it. So Grounded 2 I've kind of, viewed as like my point of like, okay, this is me giving it a shot, and I think it's a great time, really. Like, I think it's worth mentioning too that Obsidian also launched Avowed, which came out earlier this year, And like I feel so much of that game's DNA in Grounded 2, like the combat, the weight, like the weightiness of the combat, and like just the movement and the animation. So like it really helped me sort of ease into, you know, like the sort of larger gameplay systems. But yeah, I'm kind of like right where you guys are, like 4 or 5 hours in, you know, really just starting to dig into like the actual survival stuff and you know, crafting and like automation. And yeah, I mean, like I kind of echo everything that you guys are saying. Like it's really polished, like it looks good, it plays well. I think it's really balanced right out of the gate. I think there's a lot of options too. Like I was really impressed. You know, I kind of sold my daughter on playing it a little bit. She's going through a bit of a Minecraft phase, and so this kind of caught her eye as well. We were watching some streams of it, and I was actually stoked to see that there's a creative mode, and not only that, but there's a creative mode without bugs. So you know, once again, like there's just sort of like a bunch of different options here, and that's just something that like I'm not used to seeing from like an early access title. So you know, you can definitely, you know, feel sort of like the jump from Grounded 1. Wes, I do want to jump, you know, or I do want to ask you about sort of like the differences from the first one. So you mentioned story. I imagine the first one was sort of story light. How's the second, you know, like the story, the setup so far, like how's that hitting you?
Well, I think with the first Grounded, they sort of accidentally created something that was very narratively like Stranger Things, both in its, you know, 80s, 90s aesthetics, and you have this big evil corporation doing scientific things, you know, that sort of thing. And they're definitely leaning more into that because it seems that as that early access for Grounded 1 was being developed, that like that was the positive, you know, that was, you know, something that fans were reacting to positively. And so we can see that they've done that with the second one. But for me, the biggest improvement is the Omni tool, which playing the first game, you know, you had to craft axes and shovels and, you know, pickaxes, all those sorts of things. And so here you have this weightless item that can just sort of, you know, a la Ratchet and Clank, just sort of be used for different types of activities, you know, for gathering resources. And so they made it in a way that, yeah, I don't have to craft 4 different items that are gonna weigh down my inventory. I've just got this thing that can sort of do everything.
I love how the Omni tool like everything is context sensitive as well. So like, you know, it's not like I'm having to you know, like swap out like a la Stardew Valley, like, oh, I gotta make sure my hoe's equipped, oh, I gotta make sure my scythe's equipped. Like it's just always on you. And like if you just get up to like, you know, a tree or, you know, like a blade of grass or you know, something you can smash with the hammer, you know, it just kind of knows and it just lets you do it, right? Like you're not having to worry about, you know, managing your inventory on top of that. So that's a good point. And I'm glad, I mean, like that's such a, like, I feel like that's such a smart way to sort of like streamline the survival elements, because I do think that a lot of the more, even the more like polished and the more serious survival sims, like I feel like the inventory management being a pain in the ass is like a feature, not a bug.
And speaking of bugs, you guys said you guys got about like 3-4 hours into this game. Have you guys used the buggy system yet?
I did. So Matthew and I played. We got to the point right where we got the egg hatching. I forget the name of the actual item, but the ability to hatch the ant eggs. And so I ended up hatching it or hatching one in my own game and riding on it, and like my daughter like totally freaked out. So yeah, but like my experience with it is like super like not a lot.
Well, it's really cool because it's a mount that sort of acts as a pseudo sort of like, okay, yeah, it can move you around places, it can gather resources for you, and of course fight both while mounted and then not mounted, which I think is a really cool feature.
So it's like kind of like a pet and a mount in one, basically.
Yeah, it's definitely like a pet and a mount. So like you're rushing some spider with your ants, and then you're doing a couple of attacks. I'll dismount and I'm like whacking them with my club, and we're both sort of like dancing around this thing. And what I like the most about the combat with your buggy is that it doesn't feel like a burden. Like, it feels like my ant sort of knows what to do. Like, he's dodging and weaving type of, it doesn't feel like, oh shoot, he's about to die, let me get him out of here. He does feel like an actual active participant in combat.
So almost like an NPC that, like, if you're playing solo rather than co-op, like, you can still have sort of a assistant in battle.
Exactly.
Despite playing solo. That's pretty nice. I did not realize that they were also combat assistants. I thought they were just mounts. Which
I've also seen like context sensitive stuff like out in the world where like it looks like they can chew through like debris and things like that. Wes, have you seen any of that, or is there anything that like in there that you can speak to as well?
Well, yeah, no, they can like you have like your blades of grass that you're just harvesting. They'll do that for you. They can you have the gather mode where they can pick up stuff off the ground, but then you can attack like blades of grass or dandelions and things of that nature. I know that the other bugs that you're able to unlock will have different features as such. I'm assuming there's going to be like a flying one where you can fly around and stuff. And I did just see my first caterpillar, so I'm curious if that one is going to be able to, I would imagine that's like, you can like latch onto walls and stuff. That's more hearsay, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think they launched with maybe only one in early access, and they said that they'll be, they wanted to see how people, or two, I think, maybe, they wanted to see how people used it and reacted to them before they implemented the rest. I also did see that a mechanic from the first game, zip lines, which people used to get around in that game, they deliberately held back from the first early access release so that people would be more incentivized to use the mounts rather than zip lines to get around easily, which kind of makes sense. And that's interesting. And it kind of brings me to one of the things that stuck with me in playing this game is that, like we're all saying here, this game just launched. I don't even think it's even been patched since entering, public early access, and it feels really good. I mean, there are some complaints online about minor performance issues and stuff, but for an early access game, like to your point, Neil, this thing has whole other game modes that usually would be like not even a 1.0 release, but like a post-launch edition, with the creative mode and the non-bug mode, and even like the arachnophobia mode that took them a long time to add in the first game. So how do you guys feel about this being in the early access system like the first game did, despite it really being kind of a an evolution versus a total addition? I mean, it feels to me, again, didn't quite play the first, but it feels like this could almost, despite the engine upgrade, I think they moved from Unreal 4 to Unreal 5 for this one, but setting that aside, like, this could basically be an expansion pack for Grounded 1, right? So I mean, how do we feel about them going back to early access for this game?
Wes, how? I mean, well, I guess what I'm glad you kind of spoke to sort of like some of the long term like roadmap stuff, because I feel like that gives this some good context as well, because like that's where it really boils down to for me, where it's like, okay, yeah, are you going to add more bugs? Are you going to add more? And so I feel like I think when you're introducing new gameplay elements like that, and who knows, right? Like maybe there are whole new like areas and worlds and things like that, and it does seem like the scale of this world is a little bit bigger than the first one. Wesley, I would like for you to chime in on that. But yeah, I mean, it seems like maybe there's maybe they've just, I feel like it's a good sort of like starting point for them, and then like we can sort of test different things, like different bugs, and use the feedback from the community. I think that's probably what they're leaning into it for it more. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of a weird situation all around. Wesley, what were you gonna say? I'm sorry.
You're completely fine. I was going to say, just based on my previous experience, one, this feels like a very more, it's sorry. This feels like a more expansive map, compared to the first game. This may be controversial to say. The term early access doesn't really hold that much sway to me. Like, if a game says that it's in early access, it doesn't really, it's not a good or bad thing for me. For me, I see games in early access, it means, okay, hey, let me take a look at what this game currently has. What are they promising down the line via a roadmap? And then I just decide, okay, am I going to put money? I guess I look at it almost like I do a Kickstarter, but I get my hands on the Kickstarter after paying, if that makes sense. And based on what I've seen with Grounded 2, playing Grounded 2, and then seeing what's down the line, I mean, having it you could have done this as a just 1.0. You're absolutely right in that sense, but I do like the idea that if this game had a lot of issues with at launch, that they could just say, hey, well, it's early access, so we're going to be working on it. And early access almost feels like insurance in a way.
Yeah, the likely scenario in my mind is, one, they went from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal 5. 2, the size and the scope just seems like that much bigger, and then I think with that is coming sort of like a bigger vision, and so I think you're gonna see that like sort of reflected in like the different bugs that are getting added, the different gameplay mechanics, and so I think that's where you sort of justify the early access title, because I think a lot of that stuff is probably going to be a little bit more experimental, even though it's starting from a more solidified place. I think another thing too is that, I mean, like, I think it's totally reasonable, right? Like, the first one comes out and it's in early access, and that's sort of like Obsidian taking their first crack at a survival game, and this is them just doing it at a bigger scale. So I don't know. I mean, I Matthew, I'd be interested to see, like, do you feel strongly one way or the other about it?
I think you guys basically hit on a lot of my thoughts about it. One, I mean, we're judging whether it should be in early access without seeing the final product. I mean, we're comparing it to the first game, and we're comparing it favorably to the first game. But I mean, with the scale of what they could be going for here, could be just much more massive, right? I mean, the map is like 3 times as large or something. I mean, the amount of content overall is probably going to be that much, not to mention all the features and stuff. So, like it could give them a lot of good runway to test some of those things over time. It's also, I think, Wesley, the way you framed it as insurance is a pretty good way of looking at it, in that if they were to just come out and say, okay, here's all this stuff, it's 1.0, like, have fun, and then fix it all like post-launch, the things that people don't like, it's quicker for them to get it out here now versus like, another year plus of dev time to get to that 1.0. And it's a established framework that they used for the first game and knew people liked. And it was, I think it's like one of the bigger early access stories. And the other thing is, they want you playing this on Game Pass. And the fact that this is being developed with the community over a long period of time means that,
right,
if people get in with Game Pass, obviously it's available on Steam as well. But if you're playing this via Game Pass, you're incentivized to continue to check back in over time as part of that subscription versus it drops day one and you play it for like 30 hours over the course of a few weeks and then you're done with it.
That's a really good point.
No, I think this is probably, in light of the Perfect Dark cancellation and sort of the most recent round of layoffs at Microsoft, I think this is kind of like a case study of like, this is what the ideal Game Pass game for Xbox and Microsoft looks like, right? Like, I think, now that we're sort of however many years into this, like, first party games day and date on Game Pass, I think it's sort of fair to say, like, the expectations of, like, oh, you're going to get, like, AAA Gears of War quality games all the time. Like, I feel like, I think it's safe to say that Xbox hasn't lived up to that. And so I think, like, this is sort of like me looking at this is sort of like resetting expectations and like, okay, like, these are sort of the games that I think Microsoft is targeting. And I think, like, this is right in that wheelhouse, right? Like, it feels great. It looks great. Like, it's polished out of the gate. And then there's this promise of a long tail of just content afterwards. And like, that's what you want in a subscription.
Right. And not only like, this type of budget of game, but like, you want different types of games that for a variety of different people, like, you can't have all first person shooters because, you're going to miss out on people who don't play first person shooters.
I wanted to go back to the story, Wesley. What are your thoughts on the story and, like, sort of the vibe and, like, versus the first one, which sort of was story light?
Yeah. The first game is a lot more just understanding the survival mechanics, and then every here and there you're like picking up pieces and you're getting towards like the greater mystery, and there's like I didn't get to the end of it, but obviously there's a conclusion that just sort of finishes, you beat the game. But whereas with this one, it's very clear that the narrative is going to be on par with the survival, grasping the survival mechanics, and they seem, toe and toe that, like, once you unlock this mechanic, you gather this resource, you can now unlock this thing, and so, oh hey, now the story is progressing. Like, oh, you are able to ride your first little ant. Okay, here's this big piece of story. Here's this, I guess you could call it a bombshell, depending on how the story's going to go. But hey, here's this little context now, and yeah, right. I like the sprinkling in of like corporate sabotage and the finding the dead bodies and things like that, and like it really sort of grounds it, in a like just sort of like a it sort of sets the table and like makes the stakes sort of like higher for in a setting in a scenario that's sort of like lends itself to being goofier.
I was thinking about this, and I think a part of why we may be getting a more story focus here, or maybe a better way to frame it is what allows them to have a more story focus here, is something we haven't talked about yet, which is that this is not only being developed by
Obsidian.
Why am I blanking? Obsidian, thank you. It's also developed in cooperation, which the first one was not, with Eidos Montreal. Who are known for more story-driven first or single-player games. So their last game was the Guardians of the Galaxy game. Or I guess their last solo-produced game, and they're also assisting on the Fable game. So I don't know this. This is pure speculation, but it seems like Obsidian has the foundation for what the kind of gameplay this should have. And they're using that collaboration with Eidos Montreal to kind of give it some more narrative juice to bump up that aspect of the game.
Yeah, that sounds about right based on just like how those things are like sort of, like how those things sort of exist within the game. Like it definitely feels like the narrative feels like, I don't want to say tacked on, but it definitely feels like it's handled by an external team.
Yeah, and I mean, they talked about it in one of the showcases. I think it was back during, it was the Summer Games Fest showcase. They did the Grounded 2 showcase, and they talked about how, they really consider, it a partnership. It's not like, you call it like outsourcing, but they're really closely working together, and they've felt like it's been a really natural fit for Eidos to come in and help with the development. So again, I don't know that that's for sure the way that they're, going to be most visible throughout this development process, but it would make some sense to me if that's one area where they're really contributing.
I was going to ask, correct me if I'm wrong, Avowed was on Game Pass, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we had
Well, Obsidian's a first party Microsoft, like they're Xbox game studios. So yeah, all of their games are going to be day and date and Game Pass.
So you're also answering my second question, which Outer Worlds 2 is going to be Game Pass.
Yes.
In my opinion, I feel like this year, 2025, Obsidian is hauling ass with Xbox, and like we've got Avowed was an incredible, some things I didn't like about Avowed, but all in all, an incredible experience. There's going to be some things about Grounded 2 that I'm not a big fan of, but it's going to be an incredible experience. Outer Worlds 2, if that's a hit in the home, like, I'm bowing down. Like, praise Obsidian, praise the Xbox Game Pass. Like, these guys came in clutch this year.
Yeah, Neil and I were talking about that a bit when we were playing Grounded, and I mean, obviously, Outer Worlds 2 is not out yet, so we're jumping the gun a bit here. But if you have that, if let's say they do stick that landing and it's everything that it seems like it might be, the trifecta of those 3 games in a single calendar year. I mean, has any other studio ever had a single calendar year that went that hard? I would probably say no. I mean, I if you're listening to this, let us know if I'm forgetting something here. But of a single studio, I can't think of a year that has had a single calendar year that has had more impactful quality releases than that.
The closest comparison I think I can make, like the closest modern comparison I can make to Obsidian, just because of how much like game development has sort of changed and evolved over the years, is Insomniac, where like they have an established foundation for gameplay systems that pair well with Spider-Man in the case of Insomniac, but in Obsidian's case, like open world RPGs, like you can do anything from like an Elder Scrolls, like in Avowed. You can do survival stuff in Grounded. You can do super like crazy, like it almost seems like Outer Worlds 2 is sort of borrowing some Borderlands elements with like the weapons and the combat. So like it really does seem like they are hitting all of the sort of genres and subgenres in games right now. But, so I mean don't forget
they also do like Pillars of Eternity style isometric games, and they did Pentiment a couple years ago,
which was a Game of the Year contender.
Right, as with a smaller, obviously not indie feel, but they really do a lot of different things, and they really have been on a real run here, even before this year.
I'm gonna get down on my knees really quick, and I'm gonna just personally to you two, and just say that because I was looking at the Avowed Metacritic, we got an 81 for Avowed. Obviously, with early access, it's kind of TB determined, but like a lot of like IGN's giving it an 8. I saw some 9s and a 7 here and there for Grounded 2. Probably gonna get somewhere in the 80s for that on Metacritic. If Outer Worlds 2 hits an 80 on Metacritic, Neil, Matthew, I will be purchasing an Xbox.
Oh man!
Wow, you're on record now.
I am on record. I'm just saying, like, I will jump in to Team Xbox if
for those of you who don't have the historical knowledge, Wesley, like post Wesley and I living together as teenagers, Wesley has been really like reticent to like touch anything Xbox related. It's kind of like getting him to pull teeth to interact with the ecosystem. Like he's a Sony pony until he dies. So that's like big news. But yeah, no, I mean, I think, I think it's a tremendous run for them. I personally think Outer Worlds 2 is going to stick the landing in a way, like it's not going to be any worse than Avowed was, and Avowed was very much an 8 out of 10 game. So like I think as long as the Outer World comes in and like matches what the first one did for me, which is just like a really dope, like contained sci-fi RPG experience, then like, yeah, it's going to be great. And like, I think, whoever's giving out the awards for developer of the year, wherever, like in the fictional award show in my head that I just created, like they need to give it to Obsidian this year, because 2025 was definitely a year that they crushed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hands down.
But yeah, guys, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. And then when we get back, we're going to have some quick hits, things that we've been killing time with. And we are back. Wes, before we get into the quick hits, you mentioned that you would buy an Xbox if Obsidian's next game, The Outer Worlds 2, gets an 80 average on Metacritic. We didn't talk about, like, there's lots of things that Xboxes can be now, right? Like, your phone is an Xbox. Like, what so what are you thinking? Like, you going to go Series X? You going to get a ROG Ally X? Like, what does that mean? How are you buying into the Xbox ecosystem?
Well, I was just thinking about that, and honestly, I'm, as you said, I'm a Sony pony. I feel like I need a lot of like context as to like, do I get the Series X or do I get the ROG Ally? I feel like you guys could pitch me on a couple of different options and we could do a whole episode on it.
Hey, I like that idea. I'm personally getting the top tier ROG Ally X, but I feel like that mid tier might be a good option for you. But yeah, I feel like that's some good content idea. I'm gonna jot that one down.
All right, I like it.
But moving on to quick hits, we've been killing time in a variety of different ways. I personally have been killing time in what I would say is the most fun way. I went to go see Fantastic Four: First Steps yesterday, actually, so it's quite fresh in my mind. And this is obviously the newest entry in the MCU. It's got Pedro Pascal as Mr. Fantastic. It's got Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm. It's got the dude from Stranger Things as Johnny Storm, and the guy I can't remember. I think he's from The Bear.
Yeah, he's from The Bear. He's cousin.
Yes, yeah. So cousin from The Bear. I can't remember his name, but he's also as Ben Grimm, the Thing. So yeah, I'm gonna just open the floor for Fantastic Four. But let me just start off before I open up the floor. Let me just start by saying that I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think if I was gonna assign what my rankings of like recent superhero movies, I would say that Superman is better than Fantastic Four. But I still think there were parts of Fantastic Four that I really liked. There were some parts that I did not like. And I mean, yeah, so I'm just going to open the floor for you guys. Ask away.
Matthew, I'm going to
I'll
let you
lead
go
here.
first. Yeah.
I'll bite. Yeah. Okay. So, as somebody, this one, the previous Fantastic Four movies were not part of the MCU. How does this one? Does this one feel like an MCU movie? Does it feel like it's got all the hooks that normal MCU movies have into the other, other heroes and the larger universe that they're always working towards? Does this have the same feel of that, or does this feel something more like standalone that may factor into other movies down the line, but in a way that isn't clear from this one?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's a great starting off point, because I think the movie wastes absolutely no time. Like, it is not a spoiler for me to say this. The movie does not take place in the 616, like the MCU timeline. So like right off the bat, like they are straight up like, no, this is not like, and so like, I think in terms of like, if you want something that feels connected, I don't think you're going to find it. To me, it feels more akin to the original, like the very first Captain America, where it was like it's telling a very contained story that like you can tell is going to have broader implications down the road. But in terms of like what you're actually seeing, there's, it's very just cut and dry. It's a very like I do think the story is is good. But you know, I didn't come out of it being like, oh man, I can't wait for the next one. So yeah, it's a little bit of, you know, I think good and bad there.
As a comic book fan who prefers when comics do like the obscure and the pulpy weird sort of, you know, stories, how well does this Fantastic Four movie satiate that for me?
So I think that's the plus side to this not being sort of like in that core universe, is that they really had fun. So I think to back, you know, to take it back to sort of like the original Fantastic Four movies, despite those not being in the MCU, this movie very much is aware of the fact that there have been 2 other Fantastic Four movies, so they really don't waste any time with like the origin story. It takes place 4 years into them being the Fantastic Four, so you know, like Sue and Mr. Fantastic are married, like, you know, they're kind of like already the first family, they're established. And so there's really great montage of them, like, you know, very, and like I said, very pulpy, very 60s, very, you know, like it's a very, like, as a timepiece, like, it's fantastic. I love it. The retrofuturism is awesome. So there's, you know, there's great, you know, montages of them like fighting Mole Man and like, you know, all the weird sort of like obscure, like, and so I think that's where, you know, like them saying like, okay, this isn't the main MC universe, is kind of allows them to be like, you know, that, because that was a concern for me coming to this. It's like, okay, like the look, the feel, the vibe of this is like totally off. How are they going to play this off? How are they going to connect it without it being weird? And I feel like this was probably the only logical outcome. But yeah, I mean, it you know, it really allowed them to sort of have fun with the characters and like sort of that universe, and sort of pay homage to them in like their own like individual ways.
Okay, I got one last question here. If let's say a hypothetical viewer has zero interest in anything Marvel, and purely is interested in Pedro Pascal, how much is there for them in this movie compared to some of his other roles?
Man, you asked the greatest questions, because I think it gave me the, like, it hits on, like, I think the sort of hottest takes I have for this movie, in that I think that Pedro is probably not the best in this. I don't think he's at his best.
Really?
I think some of that comes down, I think he has some good scenes. I think a lot of it comes down to the writing. I think one of my chief complaints with the movie is that, like, they sort of give his, you know, Mr. Fantastic, Reed, I was blanking on his real name for a second, Reed, they sort of give him plot armor in the sense that, like, he just figures everything out, you know, like he just at no point did I feel like, you know, so like sort of taking that into account, like there's no real, like, outside of like the one of the main plot points, there's like no real drama to his character. Like he sort of like is, and I think that I think you can sort of apply that across all of them. Like I feel like because we didn't get their origin story, we kind of get these weird little tidbits of their characters. And like in Johnny's, it's sort of weird because like it's sort of like they sprinkle it in like in dialogue, so they kind of make him seem like he's doing like a Star-Lord impression, you know what I mean, to sort of like give off the vibe that he's a playboy. And like they kind of do the same thing with Reed and Pedro, where like he's sort of telling you who he is instead of showing you who he is. And I feel like that's not his fault, but I feel like that it doesn't really give him much to work with there. You know, that being said, there is I don't want to get too much into the plot because it is a spoiler, but like there's a plot point, a main, you know, like the main plot point, and like sort of like how him and Sue handle it as a married couple that I thought was awesome. So, you know, he's Pedro, he's a fantastic actor, like go see it. For him, but it's not like I don't think it's, you know, Emmy worthy, or, you know, it's not, it doesn't hold a candle to his work as Joel, is what I'm saying.
I guess my final question would be, given the recent burnout in the MCU, does this feel like someone personally, me, who has kind of been not keeping up with the MCU, would this be a good springboard for someone like me to be like, oh man, I'm ready to see like the next phase 27 or whatever we're on now, and go down this MCU rabbit hole. Is this a good springboard, or do you think it kind of lacklusters in that?
No, absolutely. No, I think it was intentionally designed to be like as lore light as possible. And obviously with that comes positives and negatives, but I do think it is, as someone who appreciates superhero movies, I do think you can sit down, watch it, and appreciate it, and not feel like you have to watch a bunch of other movies and shows to feel like you understand it, and B, like feel like you have to watch I feel like I'm not 100% sure if I remember this correctly. I feel like at the end of the movie, this isn't a spoiler. Most post-credit scenes they say like the Fantastic Four will return and whatever. They said that apparently they're not returning until Avengers Doomsday. So like it really seems like you can watch this and then like literally you won't see anything from them until Doomsday. So yeah, I would recommend watching it for sure.
But this wouldn't be something for me to watch to be like, all right, now I'm ready to see a bunch of more MCU movies and like see the larger thing that happens.
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, if you want to see Galactus, which we haven't touched on it, shout out to God, I'm really bad with names today, but the voice actor Ralph Ineson, who voiced Sid in Final Fantasy 16, does a terrific job as Galactus, as if there was any doubt. But yeah, I think Galactus, they did a good job of making him menacing. But yeah, I mean, I think if you want a fun time, I think the Captain, like the more I think back on it, like the Captain America, the first Avenger comparisons are like 100% there. Where if you want something that's gonna feel, like pulpy 60s, like it's a good period piece, but then also just has good, solid, superhero action. The effects were great. I would say like in terms of like recent Disney movies, it's probably got the best special effects, recent MCU movies. So I mean, I think it's all around. Like I would say like if I had to give it a number, it'd be like a 7 out of 10. Like it's just a solid, good movie. And it doesn't really have a lot of like broader implications yet, but I feel like it's one of those movies that we're going to keep pointing back to, like, oh yeah, like this was kind of where like it kind of feels like a reset point in a way. But yeah, moving on to other things like I don't know how to transition this, so I'm just gonna Wesley. There's a new Starfinder video game,
Outer Space,
coming out. You're very excited about it. You are our resident dungeon master, tabletop RPG master. That's a lie. Matthew's that person for us.
Oh
now.
Boy.
But you are a resident Starfinder person, and so this caught your eye. Talk to us about Starfinder, the Afterlight. Thank you.
Yeah. So last week, we got the announcement that Paizo is doing its very first Starfinder video game. And for those of you who don't know what Starfinder is, or Paizo, they are the people who do Pathfinder, which we have seen Paizo do the Pathfinder video games. And we're now seeing, basically they took Pathfinder, which is their cut version of Dungeons and Dragons, and they're like, let's just do this in space. If you've ever wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons in the Guardians of the Galaxy universe, Starfinder is the game for you. And so it's being developed by Epic Tellers Entertainment. It is they're based in Spain, I believe.
Barcelona, yeah.
But yeah. And so I can't remember who they've worked with previously on the Pathfinder games, but so this is a different studio that is heading this up. One of the cool features about this, if you're new to the Starfinder series or if you're a veteran, is that as of 4 or 5 days ago, they just released Starfinder the 2.0 system. This game is going to feature that system, and we're talking about the system, the mechanics of the game are going to run parallel with it in like the level of detail we got in Baldur's Gate 3, that it like adhered to every single rule of 5e's Dungeons and Dragons. And speaking of, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, so as someone who, DM'd a campaign, with the 1.0 Starfinder system, like how, like, is that like really exciting to you? Like, I guess, what are the, like, in a way that, like, if like could this be like the Baldur's Gate 3 for Starfinder to you as Baldur's Gate was to Dungeons and Dragons? Like, what are you most excited for them, like, sort of rehashing? Sorry.
So that is exactly one of the things I'm very excited about, because when I played Baldur's Gate 3, I was already really into Dungeons and Dragons. My favorite part about Baldur's Gate 3 was that it made me a better Dungeons and Dragons player, because I was forced to use mechanics that as a DM I just didn't read through or didn't comprehend or understand, and I think playing it made me a better tabletop player. And so the idea that they're going to be putting in this level of detail, that like the entire 2.0 mechanic is in this video game, it's giving me that same energy. And speaking of Baldur's Gate, I did find out that the voice director is, correct me if I'm wrong, BAFTA winning Neil Newbon.
Wait, for the Starlight?
Yeah, for Afterlight. Yeah,
Starfinder?
Yeah, the voice actor of Astarion from Baldur's Gate is the voice director on Starfinder. They emphasize that this game is going to have, of course, RPG elements, but you're going to have a detailed and very immersive companion system, just like Baldur's Gate, as an example. And so having a veteran from that be the voice director has me immensely excited for your companions that you're going to be picking up along the way.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, because I mean, like, I feel like games like, and I mean, correct me if I'm, like, I haven't seen the trailer here, but like, I feel like, going back to like what we were talking about Obsidian, like, I feel like a lot of people make these isometric D&D tabletop inspired RPGs. I'm not 100% sure, like, who, like, is this their first game? What's the name of the studio again?
Epic Tellers Entertainment.
Yeah, so it's like,
I believe it is their first. Yes.
Yeah, what I'm trying to get at is, like, is it fair even, like, doing the Baldur's Gate comparisons at this point? Like, like, do we even know, like, what the like the sort of like the budget for this is?
Well, I'm not imagining. Sorry. It's funny that you mentioned the budget, because they did, when they made the announcement, they did say that this is going to be launching with a Kickstarter. Okay. As well. So the budgeting is kind of so up in the air, but Paizo is, of course, backing this up, just like they backed up the initial Pathfinder games.
Yeah. I mean, I don't doubt any of that. It's just, I mean, it looks cool, and like, I mean, I like the idea of Starfinder, and I like the idea of more like developers like using TTRPG systems and like even just tabletop game systems as the foundation for their games. So I mean, like, I would love to see more of these games.
Yeah. Matthew, did you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm interested in this. I am skeptical. For one, I think there's been enough time since Baldur's Gate 3 came out to where we're going to see a influx of games that cite Baldur's Gate 3 as a direct inspiration here. And that's fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But I think that there's going to be a lot of those, and we're going to get some of varying quality. I know this is a different developer than the Pathfinder games, but I've never played any of the Pathfinder games either. But what I've always heard about them is that they're not real deep role-playing experiences like you would get from something like Baldur's Gate 3. They're more focused on action and the combat style that you like, the combat system that is in that game, rather than the role-playing aspects of it. Maybe that's not all of them. I know there's a few at this point, but that's kind of what I've heard. And so I don't know. I think there's just a lot of unknowns about this. I don't have a it's not like Paizo, judging by the Pathfinder games, I don't know that they're like going to be a real steady hand. I mean, they may be helpful here, but I don't know. There's just without knowing too much about the direction and the goals and the budget. It's kind of hard for me to get too excited about this. But I think it's promising. I mean, we see a lot of more and more tabletop games, both RPGs, like Warhammer or board games getting video game adaptations. Yeah. And I'm a fan of that trend in general, just like I like the reverse as well. So I'm rooting for it, but I'm going to need to see more. I mean, I'm sure when the Kickstarter launches, they'll have more information out there, but I think, I'm not going to get my hopes up on this one yet, but I'm glad that it exists and that they're giving it a shot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Matthew, you've been playing Wheel World, which is a fun. It's a new Annapurna joint that just dropped. Walk us through what it is and what you think of it so far.
Yeah, Wheel World is a third person cycling game essentially. It's from Messhoff Games, who made the Nidhogg games, the fighting games. This is a much different sort of game for them. It's basically like if Forza Horizon was a little like stripped back, pared down, and a little like it was just more focused on the vibes. It's still got the same sort of framework where you're in an open world and you're riding around and you can like go to specific races and then do that race that takes place on the open world, or there are like people riding around that you can like ring your bell at and then just like race them wherever you are on the world at that point. And it's all kind of tied together by what I think is maybe the most notable aspect is the soundtrack. It is a soundtrack, like a synth soundtrack, produced by Johnny Jewel, who is like a really big name. His Italian record, or his record label is Italians Do It Better. He's been around for a really long time and is very well regarded. And he and some of his label mates have made like a really good synth soundtrack that I could just ride my bike around forever to listen to that thing. No races needed. It fits super well, and it's a really good summer game. Most of the first zone you're in is just like all summer vibes. You got the gravel and the dirt underneath the wheel of your bicycle, and you're just cruising, listening to music, casually doing a few races. The game's not real long. I don't think. I've played about 4 hours, and I think I'm pretty close to the end. And there's no wasted time or anything. It's all for a purpose. So really enjoying that so far.
Yeah, so I mean, like this everything about this looks awesome, and like not a game that I traditionally would pick up and play, but like the vibe definitely seems to be doing a lot of heavy lifting here. In terms of like the cycling, the mechanics, and like the racing and all that stuff, like how does it all feel? Like, is it super satisfying? Is it fun? Like, I see customization is a big part of it. Like, walk us through that. Walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, the customization I would compare to something like Mario Kart. It's got about that level of complexity.
Got it.
You're changing out like your wheels, your frame, your saddle, your handlebars, and each one is going to either raise or lower one of 4 stats. And it's like basically you have your push, your power per pull, your power per push, which is like for each pedal how much additional speed you gain. Another one is like your max speed, like when you're going downhill or something. Then you have your handling, which affects turns, and grip, which is a little bit more nebulous, but the most tangible way that it affects is like when you get into collisions with other riders. It kind of gives you like how much you get bounced off of them when you're jostling with them.
Matthew, I was going to say, you mentioned Jimmy Jewel and talking about the soundtrack. First off, is there anything that we would know him from offhand?
Because
like the name sounds familiar.
Yeah. So he's I know he's done a few movies. In fact, I think he was originally going to do so he's part of the Chromatics. If you know the Chromatics, that's like his one of his groups that he's in with somebody else. I think I'm trying to fact check myself here before I make a fool of myself on tape. I can't confirm it, so I'm not going to say it. But it's suffice to say, I think he's scored some movies he has a huge discography. So if you know the Chromatics or anybody on the label, Italians Do It Better, you have an idea of the kind of music that he's making.
It's definitely something I want to check out. You were talking about just listening to the music and like being able to just cycle for hours. Are you telling me this has like really good replayability, or like this is something you could just pick up again in like a couple of months and just enjoy it and cruise?
I think probably not super replayable unless you were like the replayability here is getting first place and the best time in every race that there is, finding all of the random like cyclists that you can race out in the world, and maybe like collecting all the bike parts. As far as replayability goes, I don't like. This is a rare game where I feel like, again, I haven't quite finished it yet, but I can kind of see the ending, and I wish there was actually more here. But they've really tightened it up. So like, of all the races there, each one is going to kind of test you in a different way. And these are not like, there's not a real like you can win all these races probably on your first try. I haven't won them all on my first try, but it doesn't usually take more than a couple. But like,
the challenge is like replaying and getting first place and like really like sort of maximizing the victory.
Yeah, like
there.
you could speed challenge, like you could do speed challenges here, like and you could tweak your bike depending on the type of course and that sort of thing. Like if you really wanted to do that, but as far as like the average person, I don't think this is going to be one that you come back to for like, I don't get the impression they're going to be adding any new content or anything. Yeah. But it is fun to just cruise around in the world. It's just very satisfying and it's very smooth. Like they've nailed a lot of the cycling aspects. One thing I haven't mentioned here is that as somebody who is not a cyclist but who's grown up around cyclists and has done a good bit of mountain biking myself, this is clearly made by fans of cycling. There are so many like references to cycling culture and puns and like poking fun at certain types of cyclists out in the world. Like all the races are with certain types of gangs. Like there's one that's like the professional ones who were all like doctors and stuff who were like bragging about how much money they've spent on their bike frames and stuff. There's other ones that are more like like edgy, where like they're into the coffee house culture, so they'll like gather around the coffee house before and after the rides. Like it's just like poking, like it has a very knowing nod to all these different subcultures of cycling, and that really would only come from people who are actually out there. So you can definitely feel the love from the developers here.
That's really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, the more I hear you talk about it, like it really reminds me a lot of like Ollie Ollie in those games, like both in the vibe that it's going for it. Like they both seem to have like that really chill sort of like, ethereal vibe musically. And then also just like how they capture sort of the essence of the sport that they're going for here. So yeah, I'm definitely, this is another Game Pass title. Like I'm definitely like wanting to check it out as somebody who like has never really had an interest in cycling, but because of my friendship to you, like has always sort of like tangentially appreciated it. So it definitely like it definitely seems like the type of game that I could sit down and like, hearing that it's super short. Like I think that's something that I could pick up and play and like pound through in an afternoon or a week. Or weekend.
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. I mean, even if anybody doesn't see it all the way through to the end, you play this for a couple hours and enjoy it. I think it's worth giving it a shot on Game Pass. Even if you have no affinity for cycling or anything, it's a good time.
That's Wheel World, everybody, and that's going to do it for our show today. Thanks for hanging out and listening to us ramble about the things that we've been killing time with. If you want to listen to more things that we kill time and do in our free time, you can follow us on social media. All of our social links are going to be in the description of this, in our link tree. You can find us and follow us on the social platform of your choice. Don't forget to like the podcast. I don't think liking a podcast is a thing. I just like and subscribe. But don't forget to subscribe to us on your podcast service of choice. Leave a review if you're so inclined. 5 stars only. If it's a 1-star, please just be sure to point out that it's because of Wesley, not because of Matthew and me. Wesley, anything you want to say to the kind people before we log off?
Well, if you guys give us a like and a follow, that would be really good.
I'm imagining you wearing a fedora while you're saying this.
Yeah.
Okay, kitten. Okay, princess. You guys have a good night.
You be a good kitten.
This is the end of the show. Thanks, guys.